520 Sports Talk owner and on-air host Bill McCulloch, as well as Inland Sports senior writer Daryl Trujillo. Guys, it's CBU versus GCU Part 3. Daryl, I'll start with you in regards to, what to look forward to between these two teams, considering what they did in the regular season.
I predicted this matchup Wednesday evening on the Inland Sports Show, and with good reason. I felt like the Grand Canyon pressure would just overwhelm both the UTRGV ball guards and Utah Valley, and I was proven right by the fact that Utah Valley and New Mexico UTRGV turned it over north of 20 times in those two games. And honestly, I think it's fitting that it ends this way, with Grand Canyon getting a chance to prove that they belong in the NCAA tournament, just because of the way the whole situation with the number 2 seed and Utah Valley getting those 2 extra games against Tarleton to get the 2 seed played out. I mean, this is a must-win for Grand Canyon, and CBU knows that they're going on to the WNIT. So for Grand Canyon, the question is, where will they end up if they don't win this game and get the AQ?
What are some of your thoughts?
Well, I think that GCU's got a couple of things going for them. It's going to be an uphill battle. They're definitely going to have to bring their A game, and they're going to definitely have to play better than they did yesterday. For one, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in 1 year, which they lost both games in Riverside. Another thing is they've got something to play for. I mean, it's win or go home, because we don't know if they're going to be in any other type of postseason activity, whether it's WNIT or WBI. We tried to get some information from the sports information at Grand Canyon on the WBI, but they weren't sure if the contract was out or what Molly decided. So she may be putting all her marbles in this one basket, and that's got it's a double-edged sword. That's got something to really help them positive. It's just like, hey, this or bust, but there is no fallback. So hopefully that won't happen, because that would be a negative on what was a pretty good season, considering it was their first year at the helm.
Let's talk about the 2 games in Riverside this year. CBU won 81-77 in OT on Friday, then came back Saturday, won 79-64 for the series sweep over GCU. I mean, we've seen how Cal Baptist really, their margin of victory has been very high, but GCU stuck right with them in that series. Plus, GCU did okay yesterday. I mean, defensively they were really good. Offensively, it was a struggle, but Utah Valley is a good defensive team, so it should be a fun matchup. It's the first WAC title for both teams. So do you think there's going to be some championship game jitters for both teams? I'll let Daryl answer that one.
I feel like there might be, but it's just another game at this point. It's been since the end of the D2 era since CBU played in a conference tournament, as Jared Olson alluded to in his presser, and the only 2 players remaining from that roster are Georgia Dale and Ane Oleda. So it's going to be up to them to settle the team down, get them into good offense, and just be overall calm and composed on a championship stage, on a game that's on ESPN Plus, broadcasted around the nation and around the world, and just to prove that they are the number 1 team in the WAC this year, and go into the WNIT with this 23-game winning streak intact and making it win 24. I think there's a lot.
Said was CBU is a great team. Obviously, they're the class of the conference. It's a shame that they can't play in the NCAA because of the transition rule. But on the other hand, they still have life after this game today in the WNIT. And having experience in the WNIT a couple years ago with Arizona winning it all, that's a very good tournament. It's being put on very, very well. And it's just, it's not the NCAAs, but at least they would have a reward for such a great and outstanding performance and season that they had. But by and far, they are the class of the WAC on the women's side. and congratulations to California Baptist.
Sorry, guys, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. I didn't put my thing in whatchamacallit. I didn't put it in do not disturb mode, so Daryl's thing got kind of screwed up here. So we're trying to get him back online. But Bill, we'll talk a little bit right now while we get this going. Talked about it already. Can GCU win its third game in 4 days? I mean, it's tough to beat someone, like you said, 3 times in the same year. So give me your thoughts on that.
You know, both games, CBU was in control. I mean, obviously the second game was closer than the first, but when you've seen a team, and this will be the third time, and it goes for them too, when you've seen a team 3 times, there's nothing to hide. There's no secrets. You can't install a brand new offense or defense, you know, at this point in the season. So both teams are very familiar with themselves, with each other, and it's just going to be mano a mano, punch, counter punch, head to head. There's nothing, nowhere to hide, and this is going to be a great game, I think, especially on a neutral court. The advantage that CBU had, obviously, is they played at home, and Grand Canyon never got the return trip to Phoenix. So this being on a neutral court may be a factor, it may not be, but this is going to be the true test of both teams, in my opinion.
Daryl, give me your thoughts on this now that we got you a little bit back online, I believe.
All right. Yeah, I think
Okay, we are really having some problems here. I'm sorry for all this, guys. This isn't what we wanted. It's really being difficult right now. I don't know. This is really weird. So, oh, there we go. We got it. He's back in, it looks like. It's just the internet connection in the Orleans Arena is not good. So please forgive us. I tried hardwiring it so it would be a little bit better. Daryl, why don't you just come over in the picture with me right now? So we're right here.
Yeah.
So you give us your thoughts on beating a team 3 times in the same season.
Definitely not something that's very easy to do, especially when the 3 encounters are separated by about a month, which is what we're looking at here. The 2 teams got together mid-February, 19th and the 20th, and here it is just before St. Patrick's Day. I think both teams are playing a really high level of basketball. Grand Canyon escaped last night on their defense, which is what Molly Miller has been all about since she took this job over in the middle of last year after Nicole Powell left for UC Riverside. And the Lancers, well, we know the story for CBU. It's shoot, and shoot some more until some shots start falling, and that's what happened yesterday. They were cold in the first quarter, and then as quick as the sun poked out of the clouds here in Vegas, they warmed up. Now, the question is, who gets off to the hot start early, who sees a few shots go through the hoop, and who uses that to their advantage?
Let's go back to talking about the Molly Miller press conference yesterday. It seemed like she was a little upset at the fact that if they lose today, they don't get that 2 seed trip to the NCAA tournament that Utah Valley gets, simply because they didn't play those 2 games against Chicago. So, Bill, we'll start with you first. What were your thoughts when you listened to the press conference?
Well, that's part of being not in a Power 5 conference. I know that when you're in a Power 5 conference, you're going to get multiple bids to the NCAA, and that's the downside of playing in a conference like the WAC. I think she has some valid concerns. This year has been turned sideways, upside down, and whatever with the COVID. So with those 2 games that against Tarleton that Utah Valley had at the end of the year, that was definitely a big benefit for them, and that put them in the position that they're in now. Even if you want to say they backed into the WAC, the title with CBU, not being able to go to the NCAA, they're in regardless of how you want to look at it. But I think she's got some valid concern. I don't think that there's much that on the other side of the coin that they can really do about it, just because of the fact of COVID's COVID, and every team has to deal with it at one point or another.
Earl, give me your thoughts on like the chip that's going to be on GCU's shoulder today because of that, knowing that they have to win today, and knowing that they kind of got the short end in a sense, even though it was all voted on before the season started. They're upset because they beat Utah Valley yesterday, but if they lose today, they don't go to the NCAA tournament. Talk to me about that chip that will be there for the Lopes.
Oh, yeah. Grand Canyon absolutely has everything to prove this afternoon. And CBU does to an extent also, but I feel like Grand Canyon has more to prove on the national stage in Millie Miller's first year at the helm because of the way that whole thing went down. We're talking about a situation where a historically bad Chicago State program could not find a common date for Grand Canyon to make up those 2 games, and as a result, a team that might not deserve to be in the NCAA tournament gets to go to San Antonio if CBU wins this game this afternoon. I think the $64,000 question is, if CBU wins this game this afternoon, does Grand Canyon get to go to the WNIT as a second team from the WAC, or do they get to go to the WBI as the primary representative from the WAC?
Well, there's a lot at stake today in this women's WAC tournament championship game. Again, California Baptist, the top seed, Grand Canyon, the 3 seed, who beat Utah Valley yesterday by 3 points in the WAC semifinals. Huge implications, at least for the Lopes. I mean, CBU knows where it's going. There's so much on the line for GCU today that, I mean, there's a little bit more motivation because they know what they're playing for, although CBU is playing for an undefeated season still. It's going to be fun. We'll talk just a few more minutes here about the keys for CBU. I wrote down handle the pressure, hit shots, and they have to get off to a good start. If they get off to the poor start that they did yesterday in that semifinal game, it's going to be a long night for the Lancers. Bill, what do you think about that?
Well, CBU, even though an undefeated season is great, but you got to remember that they're also playing for a higher seed in the WNIT. Like I said, having to watch Arizona go through their progression a couple of years ago, they played every single game in McHale Center at home, and they beat Northwestern in the final to win the WNIT. That is huge. When you can play in front of your home crowd, no matter what school you're at, that's such a big lift, and especially in postseason where you don't get that in the NCAAs, as they're going to be in the bubble in San Antonio. So they still have a lot to play for. They have a lot to not necessarily prove to the country, but maybe prove to themselves that they are the real deal. They're an undefeated team. They want to make a mark on CBU basketball history and go out undefeated and have people look back in years to come at this team and say that was something special.
Daryl, give me your thoughts on this. Let's talk first about what CBU is playing for, and then we'll talk even more about what GCU has to do to pull a win off today and, knock off the Lancers from the ranks of the undefeated.
Well, we're talking about the ranks of the undefeated, and I believe it's only one other team has done what CBU is attempting to do this afternoon. Go undefeated through the regular season, win the conference tournament, and yet not be able to advance to the NCAA tournament. And that was Oral Roberts back in I want to say it was the mid to late 80s. I guess Oral Roberts must have been going through that transition to D1 also. But as much as there is for Grand Canyon to play for, I feel like there's just as much for CBU to play for because of that undefeated season, because of the implications on the recruiting and the advantage that it would give Jared Olson on the recruiting trail going forward. Not that a 20 in one season wouldn't give him a little bit of a prop up already on the recruiting trail, but I feel like it would open CBU up to more players across the country. I mean, if we look at the CBU roster, I mean, you've got Bill Ambrosi and Harper from the Midwest. You have Oleda and Dale from, international recruits, which is what he seemingly specializes in. And then you have Brittany Thomas, the local. I feel like this kind of a season would open up CBU to more players locally. Players like Chloe Briggs from Ontario Christian, who Earl Miller's season scoring record at the high school level as a freshman, and is getting offers from all over the P5. Players like that, I feel like, their eyes would open up to CBU if they can keep this undefeated campaign going just a little while longer. For GCU, I feel like the same from Molly. Although there's not an undefeated season, there's a little bit of a, hey, we beat the undefeated team. We did this as a first-year program. We pulled this together in 4 months with no 2020s left by my predecessor. Look what we can do if we have a proper recruiting class.
Yeah, I think there's a lot at stake for both teams. Again, GCU likes to put a lot of pressure on teams, force a lot of turnovers. CBU, when they hit shots, when they hit double-digit three-pointers, they're unbeatable. And like you said, they had the WAC Player of the Year, Ane Oleta from Spain, having a terrific year. But GCU counters. They have the WAC Freshman of the Year and Newcomer of the Year in Katie Scott, who had a monster quarter against Utah Valley yesterday. I mean, she scored 90% of the points in that fourth quarter, plus Laura Pierre at the point guard, Tiara Brown. These are two of the – I mean, they're here because they're two of the most complete teams in this conference. I just think that this is who, as much as people will say, and as much as I admit that I would have loved to see Utah Valley in the championship, these are the two teams that should be here, to be honest with you. I mean, we talked about it yesterday with someone that had GCU been able to get those 2 games against Chicago State scheduled, they would have been the 2 seed. So it's pretty, it's pretty cut and dry that this is the game that it should be. It's going to be a fun one. I want to get your predictions here as we close down. Bill, let's get your prediction first.
Well, I think that I was talking to Daryl before we came on the air. Some of the biggest keys are TCU's got to find that third scorer. Katie's going to bring it, but you've got to spread the wealth. And I think the biggest 2 points that they need to watch is limit the empty possessions. Against a team like CBU, you cannot come away empty. You've got to get good shots. You've got to get open shots, and you've got to make the shots. Second of all, GCU's Achilles heel has been rebounding. They were minus 12 yesterday in rebounding against Utah Valley. You can't do that against the Lancers, or they're going to run you out of the gym. So I think the rebounding factor, you've got to box out, you've got to get position, but also you got to push the ball. I think that GCU, once they get the rebound, I think they've got to get things rolling and push the ball up court and try to catch CBU off balance going back on defense. I think it's going to be closer, to be honest with you, than the first 2 games. I would say 5 to 7 points either way. Whoever wins, I would give the edge to Cal Baptist, even though they've already won the first 2 games. And like I said, it is hard to win that 3rd game. But, there's a lot to be played for GCU, obviously. But Cal Baptist is not definitely going to lay down.
Daryl, let's hear your prediction.
I feel like this will be the Lancers' 24th win. I feel like having the extra day off will help them, as opposed to the fact that Grand Canyon their way through the 4th quarter last night. Although I will not be shocked if Grand Canyon wins. I will be shocked if this game is played outside of a 10-point window on either side. I feel like the teams are that evenly matched that if we see more than a 10-point deviation at any point during this game, I feel like it'll be a shock to the system and really something that we'll all look at the end of the night and we'll have our kind of jaws to the floor like, wait, so-and-so took a 12-point lead at such and such time, and then we'll look at it and just as fast, it'll be down to a 1-possession game. So expect a barn burner, ladies and gentlemen. I think it'll be the Lancers just because of the fact they had that extra day of rest and they did not have to grind through that 4th quarter like Grand Canyon did.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate to the both of you. I'm going to say GCU just because I think there's a huge chip on the shoulder of the Lobes because they want to get to that NCAA tournament. I mean, if the Lancers were playing to go to the NCAA tournament, I would go CBU, but they already know where they're going in the postseason. This is everything for GCU, and Molly Miller is just a winner. I mean, she's just a winner, period. And I love what CBU's done, and I think it's going to be a great basketball game. I'm just playing devil's advocate and going with GCU because I think about that chip on his shoulder. Anyways, for Bill McCullough, the on-air host, 520 Sports Talk, Daryl Trujillo, I'm Kyle McDonald with WAC Hoops Digest. We will see you after the game for our post-game breakdown. And enjoy the game, everyone. Tip-off is in about just over 11 minutes. So look forward to a fun game this afternoon.